The invasion began on a crisp autumn morning. Earth's skies were clear, the air heavy with the quiet hum of life going about its routine. Then, without warning, they came. Vast, triangular warships emerged from shimmering rifts in the atmosphere, their hulls sleek and black, absorbing the sunlight like cosmic predators. Cities around the globe were plunged into chaos as the Othrian fleet announced its presence, broadcasting a single message on every frequency: "This is General Ketra of the Othrian Vanguard. Humanity, your time has come. Surrender your planet, or we will take it by force." The words, delivered in a calm but commanding tone, echoed in dozens of languages, translated flawlessly by the Othrians' advanced technology. People froze, staring at the sky, where the ships hovered like harbingers of doom. Some ran. Others prayed. The rest simply watched, paralyzed by fear. General Ketra stood on the bridge of her flagship, the Vorathian, her crimson battle armor gleaming under the cool light of holographic displays. Her sharp features were framed by dark, braided hair, and her violet eyes glowed faintly with an intensity that intimidated even her own officers. She gazed down at the spinning blue planet beneath her, a mix of contempt and curiosity flickering across her face. "Commander Zale," she said, addressing her second-in-command. "Deploy the advance units. Begin with the capital cities. Show them the might of the Othrian Empire." Zale, a stern woman with a scar running from her temple to her jawline, saluted crisply. "It will be done, General." As the command was given, sleek, angular dropships detached from the fleet, descending like metallic wasps toward Earth's surface. Within moments, cities like New York, Tokyo, and London were under siege. Earth's governments scrambled to respond, deploying jets and launching missiles, but their efforts were futile. The Othrian technology was too advanced, their shielding systems rendering Earth's weapons little more than sparks against an unyielding force. Ketra observed the chaos with clinical detachment. Her race had conquered dozens of planets, and this one seemed no different. The humans were disorganized, their leaders slow to act. It would be an easy victory, perhaps too easy. She turned to one of her aides. "Have we encountered any resistance of note?" she asked. "Minimal," the aide replied, her voice tinged with boredom. "Their militaries are outdated. Their defenses primitive." Ketra nodded but said nothing. Her people had long dismissed emotion and individuality in favor of efficiency and logic. Empathy was a liability. Yet, something about this invasion felt different. As she watched humans scatter across the streets of Washington, D.C., she couldn't help but notice their behavior. They weren't just running or fighting, they were protecting one another. A man shielded a crying child with his body. A group of civilians linked arms to help an elderly woman escape. These acts, though seemingly inconsequential, unsettled her in a way she couldn't explain. Meanwhile, on the ground, chaos reigned. In Washington, the Othrian troops marched through the streets, their sleek, insect-like exosuits glinting under the pale sun. Their helmets concealed their faces, and their movements were unnervingly synchronized. Resistance was futile. Tanks were overturned like toys, and soldiers were disarmed before they could even aim. President Laura Martinez had been rushed to an underground bunker beneath the White House. The mood among her advisors was grim as reports flooded in. Communication networks were failing, and cities were falling like dominoes. "They're unstoppable," one aide said, his voice trembling. "They're not invincible," Martinez replied firmly. "We need to figure out what they want. Every conqueror has a motive." Before she could elaborate, the bunker's monitors flickered. Ketra's face appeared on the screen, her gaze piercing and unwavering. "President Martinez," she said, her tone even. "You are the leader of this world?" Martinez hesitated for only a moment. "I am." "Good," Ketra said. "Then you understand the futility of resistance. Surrender your world peacefully, and your people will be spared unnecessary suffering." Martinez clenched her fists. You invade our planet, attack our cities, and expect us to bow to you? We'll never surrender. Humanity doesn't give up so easily. Ketra raised an eyebrow. So I've observed. Your people display unusual resolve. Primitive, yet intriguing. Martinez seized on the comment. You don't understand us, General. You see us as inferior, but our strength lies in what you can't measure. Our courage. Our creativity. Our ability to adapt. Ketra tilted her head, studying the human leader with a flicker of interest. We shall see if your spirit is enough to save you, she said, cutting the transmission. For the first time in her career, doubt crept into Ketra's mind. She had expected fear and submission, not defiance and passion. Turning away from the monitor, she stared out at Earth, a strange unease growing within her. Unbeknownst to her, this invasion would not go as planned. Something about humanity was different, and it would challenge everything she thought she knew about strength, purpose, and what it meant to be alive. The invasion progressed with devastating efficiency. Cities fell under Authrian control in hours, their automated technology dismantling Earth's defenses. The alien soldiers were coldly methodical, moving through urban centers with unyielding precision. Yet, even in the face of certain defeat, humanity's resilience began to perplex their conquerors. Ketra's observations. General Ketra stood on the balcony of the captured Capitol building, overlooking the ruins of Washington, D.C. The Authrian soldiers had established control zones, patrolling streets now littered with abandoned cars and smoldering debris. Despite the chaos, the humans were proving more unpredictable than she'd anticipated. Her violet eyes scanned the streets below, where small groups of civilians gathered, exchanging furtive glances before dispersing. There was no coordinated resistance, but their spirit had not been broken. She turned to her second-in-command, Captain Zale. They don't behave like other species we've conquered, Ketra said, her tone measured. They're disorganized, Zale replied dismissively. Unfit for survival in a galactic context. And yet, Ketra said, gesturing to a group of civilians working together to pull an injured man from a collapsed building, they risk their lives for one another. Even in defeat, they defy logic. Zale frowned. Emotion. A liability. Perhaps, Ketra murmured. But deep down, she wasn't so sure. Private Vrix's encounter on the outskirts of Chicago, Private Vrixa led a squad tasked with securing a key industrial zone. The mission was routine, but as they moved through the area, she noticed a figure crouched behind a pile of rubble. She signaled her team to halt and approached cautiously, her weapon trained on the target. Stand down, Vrixa commanded, her voice cold and mechanical through her helmet's translator. The figure, a young woman with dark, curly hair, stood slowly, her hands raised. Her clothes were dirty, her face streaked with soot, but her eyes burned with defiance. What are you waiting for? The woman asked, her voice trembling but firm. Go ahead. Kill me like you did the others. Vrixa hesitated. The Authrian protocol was clear: eliminate any potential threats. Yet, something about this human, her defiance, her vulnerability, made Vrixa pause. I am not here to kill you unless you resist, Vrixa said, lowering her weapon slightly. The woman crossed her arms. Resist? You're invading my planet. That's enough reason to fight back. What purpose does it serve? Vrixa asked, genuinely curious. Your people cannot win. Resistance is illogical. Maybe, the woman said, stepping closer, her voice rising. But we don't fight because it's logical. We fight because it's right. Because freedom is worth it. Vrixa was taken aback. This level of passion was alien to her. For the first time in her life, she questioned the rigid doctrines of her society. Against her training, she made a decision. What is your name? She asked. The woman's eyes narrowed. Eliza. I am Vrixa, the alien soldier replied. Go. I will not report you. Eliza hesitated, searching Vrix's face for any sign of deception. Finding none, she turned and disappeared into the ruins. Vrixa stood there for a long moment, her weapon lowered, the encounter replaying in her mind. Ketstra's growing doubt. Back in Washington, Ketstra found herself drawn to Earth's artifacts. She had commandeered the Library of Congress, transforming it into her personal study. Stacks of books and digital archives surrounded her as she absorbed Earth's history, art, and culture. She was fascinated by the complexity of human civilization, their wars and triumphs, their suffering and hope. One artifact in particular caught her attention, a photograph of Earth's first moon landing. The image of humans standing on a barren lunar surface, planting a flag in defiance of their limitations, stirred something within her. It was not weakness she saw in them, but ambition. Zale entered, breaking her reverie. General, progress reports indicate total control of 40% of the planet's population centers. Resistance is scattered but persistent. Persistent, Ketstra repeated, setting down the photograph. What drives them? Zale frowned. Survival instinct. Primitive emotion. It's irrelevant. Perhaps, Ketstra said, though her tone suggested otherwise. But they inspire loyalty among one another. Their creativity and adaptability exceed our projections. Even their art. She gestured to a nearby painting of Van Gogh's Starry Night. It conveys something intangible. Zale stepped closer, her voice lowering. With respect, General, our mission is conquest, not curiosity. You are letting these creatures cloud your judgment. Ketstra met her gaze, her expression unreadable. And what if they are more than creatures, Zale? The seeds of rebellion. Unbeknownst to Ketstra, her growing empathy was spreading among her soldiers. Vrix's encounter with Eliza had shaken her deeply, and she began questioning the Othrian doctrines she had once followed without hesitation. In quiet moments, she replayed Eliza's words in her mind, "We don't fight because it's logical. We fight because it's right." Other soldiers, too, began to notice the humans' unique qualities. Musicians in Paris played haunting melodies on ruined streets. Children in Rio de Janeiro laughed and danced in defiance of the alien patrols. A doctor in Mumbai continued tending to the injured, even under the threat of alien weapons. These acts of defiance, small but profound, rippled through the Othrian ranks. For the first time, cracks began to form in their disciplined facade. An ominous warning. Ketstra's contemplation was interrupted when Zale approached her with a grim expression. "I've sent a report to the High Council," she said. "They've ordered reinforcements. They fear you're losing focus." Ketstra's jaw tightened. "You question my leadership?" "I question your priorities," Zale replied bluntly. "You're letting these humans distract you. If you cannot finish this invasion, the Council will." Ketstra stared at her second-in-command, the tension palpable. "The Council may send reinforcements, but I remain in command," she said firmly. "And I will decide the fate of this planet." As Zale left, Ketstra's resolve hardened. She stood alone, staring at the earth through the massive windows of her warship. For the first time in her long military career, she felt conflicted. The humans were teaching her something she couldn't yet articulate, something that threatened to change the course of the invasion, and perhaps her very identity. The ceasefire, the Othrian invasion, slowed as General Ketstra ordered her forces to halt their advance. Her official statement to her troops was pragmatic. The humans' resourceful resistance warranted a reassessment of tactics. But in truth, Ketstra was buying time, trying to untangle the growing conflict within her own mind. The decision caused ripples of confusion and dissent within the Othrian ranks, particularly among her officers. On Earth, the news of the sudden ceasefire was met with both relief and suspicion. President Laura Martinez convened an emergency council in the damaged United Nations headquarters, where surviving world leaders debated how to proceed. The general consensus was cautious optimism, though many believed it to be a ploy. "We can't trust them," argued Prime Minister Ogawa of Japan. This is likely a tactic to lull us into complacency. But if there's a chance to negotiate, we must take it, Martinez countered. Billions of lives are at stake. Then came an unthinkable request. Ketra herself, via a holographic message, invited humanity's leaders to a meeting in neutral territory. The location she proposed was the United Nations building, a symbolic gesture that was as unnerving as it was intriguing. The meeting 2 days later, Ketra arrived in a sleek Othrian transport, flanked by 2 armored soldiers. Her appearance was met with a mix of awe and unease. She exuded authority, her crimson battle armor polished to a mirror sheen, her violet eyes scanning the room with a calm intensity. President Martinez stepped forward to greet her, flanked by her advisors. "General Ketra," she said, her tone measured. "You've brought our world to its knees, and now you want to talk?" "I have seen your people's resilience," Ketra replied, her voice steady but tinged with something akin to respect. "And I am beginning to wonder if we have underestimated your species. I propose a conditional surrender." Martinez stiffened. "What conditions?" "Your world will become a vassal of the Othrian Empire. You will retain governance over local affairs, but you will supply resources and technology to our fleet." Murmurs of outrage erupted among the human leaders. "You mean slavery?" Ogawa snapped. Ketra raised a hand to silence him. "Your species will survive, and your culture will be preserved. The alternative is annihilation." Martinez locked eyes with Ketra. "You misunderstand us, General. We don't submit to oppression, no matter the odds." Ketra frowned, visibly torn. "You fight for what you call freedom. But freedom is an illusion. In unity, in obedience, there is strength." Martinez shook her head. "Strength isn't just about power. It's about choice. About standing for something bigger than yourself." The tension in the room was palpable. Ketra's soldiers shifted uneasily, clearly unused to hearing their leader challenged so openly. Ketra herself seemed at a loss for words, her gaze flickering between Martinez and the other leaders. For the first time in her life, she felt outmatched not by force, but by conviction. Division among the Othrians. While the meeting unfolded, Captain Zale was growing increasingly restless. She had always respected Ketra's leadership, but this newfound hesitation was unacceptable. In Zale's eyes, the humans were nothing more than an infestation to be eradicated. Frustrated, she sent a coded message to the High Council, requesting immediate intervention. The Council's response was swift. Reinforcements were dispatched, along with a mandate to remove Ketra from command if she continued to show weakness. Zale relished the opportunity to act, but kept her plans hidden for now. Elsewhere, Private Vrixa was wrestling with her own doubts. Since her encounter with Eliza, she had been haunted by the human's words and spirit. Disillusioned with the Othrian way of life, Vrixa sought out others who felt the same. Quietly, she began to form a small faction of dissenters, hoping to protect the humans they were meant to conquer. An unlikely bond. Back in Chicago, Vrixa ventured into the ruins to find Eliza again. She located her in a makeshift shelter, tending to a group of injured civilians. At first, Eliza was wary, but Vrixa laid down her weapon and removed her helmet, revealing sharp, alien features softened by an unmistakable vulnerability. "I don't understand your people," Vrixa admitted. "You risk everything for others, even when there's no logic to it." "Why?" Eliza paused, wiping her hands on a rag. "Because it's the right thing to do. Logic doesn't always have the answers. Sometimes, you have to follow your heart." "Heart?" Vrixa echoed, frowning. "We were taught emotions are weakness." "Then you were taught wrong," Eliza said, a small smile tugging at her lips. "Maybe it's time you start thinking for yourself." For Vrixa, the words were a revelation. She began helping Eliza and her group, secretly supplying them with food and medical supplies. Over time, the two women formed a tentative friendship, bridging the gap between their vastly different worlds. A betrayal and a revelation. Ketstra's ceasefire did not last long. The arrival of Othrian reinforcements, led by a stern emissary of the High Council, shattered the fragile truce. The new fleet began attacking indiscriminately, undoing much of Ketstra's efforts to minimize human casualties. Worse, the High Council issued an ultimatum: Kettra was to step down, or she would be forcibly removed. Zale seized the moment to stage a coup. In a fiery confrontation aboard the Vorathian, Zale accused Kettra of treason. "You've let these humans infect your judgment," she snarled. "You've forgotten what it means to be Othrian." Kettra stood her ground. "Perhaps it is you who has forgotten. These humans are not the weak creatures we believed them to be. Their strength lies in their spirit, something we have long since lost." The confrontation ended in violence. Kettra narrowly escaped with the help of a few loyal officers, fleeing to Earth where she sought refuge with the very people she had come to conquer. A new alliance. Despite their initial distrust, President Martinez agreed to shelter Kettra. In a secret meeting, the former conqueror outlined her plan to stop Zale and the High Council's reinforcements. "If we work together," Kettra said, "we can stop them. But you must trust me." Martinez studied her for a long moment before nodding. "Trust is earned, General. But if you're willing to fight for this planet, we'll fight with you." As the remnants of Earth's military and the Othrian defectors began to organize, a fragile alliance was born. For the first time, humanity and its invaders stood united against a common foe. Kettra knew the road ahead would be treacherous, but for the first time, she felt something unfamiliar stirring within her hope. The Othrian reinforcements arrived in full force, their fleet blotting out the skies. Captain Zale, now commander of the invasion, wasted no time unleashing the Empire's might upon Earth. Cities that had survived the initial invasion were bombarded relentlessly. The High Council's orders were clear: crush humanity and eliminate General Kettra. On the ground, a new alliance was forming. In a remote military base in Colorado, Kettra worked alongside President Martinez and a coalition of human leaders, strategists, and soldiers. The once proud general now stood as a fugitive in her own army, humbled but determined. "Humanity fights differently than my people," Kettra said during a strategy meeting. "You use unpredictability and emotion to your advantage. If we are to succeed, we must embrace those strengths." Martinez nodded. "We don't have the firepower to take them head-on, but we can exploit their weaknesses. Zale's forces are rigid, dependent on centralized commands. If we disrupt their communication networks, we can create chaos." "Then we hit their flagship," added Vrixa, who had become a key liaison between Kettra and Earth's forces. "Take out Zale, and the rest will falter." It was a desperate plan, but it was their only chance. Preparing for battle, the days leading up to the battle were a whirlwind of preparation. Human engineers worked alongside Othrian defectors to retrofit alien technology into Earth's remaining aircraft and weaponry. Civilians volunteered in droves, ready to fight for their planet. Artists painted murals on the walls of bunkers, while musicians played stirring anthems, boosting morale. Eliza, now a symbol of resistance, worked tirelessly alongside Vrixa, who had fully embraced her newfound identity as a rebel. The two shared quiet moments amid the chaos, their bond growing stronger. "You could have left," Eliza said one night, her voice soft. "Gone back to your people." "I found something here I never thought possible," Vrixa replied, her alien features softened by an expression of warmth. "Purpose. Connection. And maybe hope." Meanwhile, Kettra prepared for what she knew would be her most difficult battle. For the first time in her life, she was fighting not for conquest, but for something greater. "This is not just about Earth," she told her loyal officers. "If we succeed, we prove that change is possible for humanity and for Othria." The final battle began at dawn. The combined forces of Earth and the Othrian defectors launched a daring assault on Zale's flagship, the Crithalon. Human jets equipped with alien tech darted through the sky, evading Othrian drones. Ground forces sabotaged enemy strongholds, cutting off supply lines and diverting reinforcements. Ketra led a strike team aboard the Crithalon, accompanied by Vrixa, Eliza, and a group of elite human and Othrian soldiers. The plan was simple but dangerous: disable the ship's central command hub and confront Zale directly. The team fought their way through the flagship's sterile, metallic corridors, encountering heavy resistance at every turn. Vrixa moved with precision, her knowledge of Othrian tactics proving invaluable. Eliza, armed with a salvaged alien weapon, held her own, her determination shining through her fear. As they neared the command center, Ketra paused, her gaze steady. "This is where it ends," she said. "Zale will not yield. Be prepared for anything." The showdown. The command center was a cavernous room filled with holographic displays and Othrian officers. At its center stood Captain Zale, clad in black armor that gleamed under the harsh light. Her expression was one of cold fury as Ketra and her team entered. "Ketra," Zale sneered. "You've betrayed everything our people stand for. Do you truly believe these humans are worth saving?" "I believe they've shown us what we've forgotten," Ketra replied, stepping forward. "Strength isn't found in conquest. It's found in unity, in compassion. And that's something you will never understand." Zale drew her weapon, a crackling energy blade. "Then you are no longer Othrian. Prepare to die." The battle that followed was ferocious. Ketra and Zale clashed in a blur of speed and precision, their blades sparking as they struck and parried. Around them, the strike team engaged the remaining officers, the room a chaotic whirl of gunfire and explosions. At a critical moment, Zale disarmed Ketra and raised her blade for the killing blow. But before she could strike, Vrixa intervened, tackling Zale and sending them both sprawling. Ketra seized the opportunity, reclaiming her weapon and delivering a decisive blow, disabling Zale's armor and rendering her unconscious. With Zale defeated, the Crithalon's command systems were disabled. The ship began to lose altitude, alarms blaring as systems failed. The remaining Othrian forces, leaderless and disorganized, began retreating. A new dawn. As the battle ended, Ketra and her team evaluated the Crithalon just before it crashed into the Pacific Ocean. Across the globe, the Othrian forces withdrew, their invasion halted. In the days that followed, humanity and the Othrian defectors began rebuilding. Ketra addressed both groups in a historic broadcast, her voice steady and resolute. "This is not the end," she said. "This is the beginning. Together, we can forge a new path, one where strength is not measured by domination, but by understanding." President Martinez stood beside her, echoing the sentiment. "Today, we proved that even in the face of overwhelming odds, unity can triumph. Let this be a lesson for all of us." Epilogue. Months later, Earth and Othria established a tentative alliance. Ketra returned to her homeworld to challenge the High Council, vowing to reform her society. Vrixa remained on Earth, working with Eliza to help rebuild and foster connections between the two species. Though scars of the invasion remained, humanity emerged stronger, their resilience a testament to their indomitable spirit. And for Ketra, the experience of Earth had forever changed her, planting a seed of hope that even the most rigid societies could evolve. As the first joint Earth-Othrian spacecraft launched into the stars, a new chapter began not just for humanity, but for the galaxy.